Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to crack open a secret of the digital world, a really fundamental tool that stands guard over pretty much everything, from your Wi-Fi all the way to your secure emails.
I mean, really think about that for a second. Every single time you hop on Wi-Fi, you're just trusting that the data zipping through the air is authentic and hasn't been secretly messed with. But how can you be so sure? This is one of the biggest questions in all of digital communication.
Well, the answer is this really clever cryptographic tool that was designed to solve this exact problem. It's called a CBC-MAC, and you can think of it as the secret security guard of the internet.
Okay, I know, that is a mouthful. Cipher block chaining message authentication code. So let's just break it down. It uses something called a block cipher, which is really just a way to encrypt fixed-size chunks of data to create a totally unique digital fingerprint for a message. We call this fingerprint a tag. Now here's the cool part. If the message changes, even by one letter, that fingerprint changes completely.
You know, the easiest way to picture this is like one of those tamper-proof seals on a bottle of aspirin. If that seal's intact, you know for a fact that what's inside is the real deal and nobody's messed with it. A CBC-MAC does the exact same thing, just for digital stuff.
And look, this isn't some obscure theory from a textbook. You are probably using it right this second. It's a key part of the security for your Wi-Fi, for secure websites using TLS, for those corporate VPNs that use IPsec, and even when you connect your headphones using Bluetooth. It is literally everywhere.
So how is this digital seal actually forged? Well, the magic is right there in the name, Cipher block chaining. It creates this incredibly strong, interconnected chain, and to really get why it's so strong, we need to see how every single link is made.
Okay, picture your message like a line of dominoes. First, you chop it up into these equal-sized blocks. The very first block gets encrypted using a secret key that only you and the receiver know. Then, and here's the chaining part, the result of that is mixed in with the next block of your message before it gets encrypted. See how that works? This just keeps repeating, block after block, forging a chain where every single link depends on the one that came right before it. And that final, single encrypted block at the very end, that's your MAC tag.
And this is what cryptographers call the avalanche effect, and it's brilliant. Because every single block is chained to all the ones before it, changing just one tiny bit in the original message. I mean, anywhere, even in the first block, starts a cascade of changes that totally scrambles the final tag. It's what makes that seal so darn effective.
But, of course, like any powerful tool, CBC-MAC has a critical weakness. A real Achilles heel that, if you don't handle it just right, can bring the whole house of cards crashing down.
And here it is, the big but. While CBC-MAC is rock solid for messages that are always the same, fixed length, it totally falls apart when the messages can have different lengths.
So you gotta get this part right. For messages of a fixed, predictable length, it's secure. But when the length can change, an attacker can basically take two completely separate, valid messages, stitch them together, and create a third, totally fake message that somehow still passes the authentication check. That's the heart of the vulnerability.
Now you might be thinking, how on earth could an attacker actually pull this off? Well, it sounds complex, but the ways they can exploit these weaknesses in the real world are surprisingly simple if a system is built the wrong way. Let's take a look.
All right, let's dive into the wild and look at two classic attacks that happen because of some common but really dangerous mistakes people make when they're building these systems.
Okay, this first one is like cryptography 101 of what not to do. You never, ever reuse your keys. But, you know, it's a tempting shortcut. So what happens if you use the exact same secret key to both encrypt your message and to create its CBC-MAC tag?
So let's set the stage with our usual cast of characters. We've got Alice, and she wants to send a private, authenticated message to Bob. But Eve, our eavesdropper, is listening in, and she manages to grab that encrypted message while it's in transit.
Now, Eve can't read the message, right? She doesn't have the key. But here's the scary part. She doesn't need to. She can just start flipping bits and changing the encrypted data in any of the blocks she wants, as long as she doesn't touch the very last one. So Bob gets this modified message. When he decrypts it, it's complete nonsense, total gibberish. But, and this is terrifying, when he checks the authentication tag to see if it's been tampered with, it passes. The tag is still valid.
So how is that even possible? It's all because of a mathematical loophole that opens up when you reuse that key for two different jobs. Eve's sneaky changes to the encrypted message just poof, get perfectly canceled out during the final check. So to Bob, it looks like a 100% valid, untampered message from Alice. even though it's now complete garbage. He has been totally and completely fooled.
All right, on to attack number 2. This one gets its power from something called the initialization vector, or IV. Think of it as a random starting value that makes sure encrypting the same message twice doesn't look the same. But if an attacker can control that starting value, you've got a huge problem.
And this one is, man, it's so clever, it's scary. Remember that random starting value, the IV? Well, if an attacker can control it, they can pull off a bait and switch. What they do is change the first part of the message to whatever they want, and then they cook up a brand new fake IV that's perfectly designed to cancel out that change mathematically. The result? After that very first step, the rest of the chain gets built in the exact same way as the original legitimate message, which means a completely different message gets the same valid tag. Okay, so yeah, these attacks are definitely scary stuff. But the good news is, cryptographers have developed really clear and effective fixes to make this chain unbreakable. So let's see how they work.
So to fix that big variable length message problem, there are 3 main solutions. One is to just tack on the message's length to the very first block, so the length itself becomes part of the chain. A really popular one is to take the final tag and then encrypt it one more time with a totally different key. It's like putting it in a locked safe, and it breaks the math the attacker needs. All of these are proven ways to stop those forgery attacks cold.
And for those other 2 attacks, the rules are even easier. These are the golden rules. Seriously. First, and I can't say this enough, never, ever, ever use the same key for 2 different things. Use one key to encrypt and a totally separate key to authenticate. End of story. And second, always use a fixed initialization vector. Both sides just agree to use the same one every time, usually a block of all zeros, so an attacker can't play games with it.
And you know, all of this really boils down to one central idea. CBC-MAC is an incredibly strong and useful building block. A cryptographic primitive, as they call it. But that's all it is, a building block. Its actual security out in the real world doesn't come from the algorithm itself. It comes from the care and the precision that someone uses when they put it into a system.
And really, that's a lesson that goes way beyond just this one algorithm. The most brilliant, powerful cryptographic tools in the world can be made totally useless by one simple mistake in how they're used. It's a powerful reminder that in our digital world, security is a process, not just a product. It's not enough to just have the tool. You've got to understand how to use it right.